As a scientist, it's quite baffling to me that we have an avalanche of data showing that it's the spike protein that causes the deleterious effects of COVID. But we don't see any problem with putting genetic material into the cells of our body that tell it to make tons and tons of spike protein.
Before I got vaccinated, I had seen this interview with a scientist declaring that there was too much we didn't know about COVID to inject the spike protein into our bodies like we do with the vaccine. He talked about this mysterious long COVID syndrome that we couldn't explain and that seemed to have something to do with the spike protein of the coronavirus making its way into various organs of the body.
Ginsha lab at Georgetown showed that the spike protein signals through the ACE2 receptor, which usually doesn't signal at all, and that leads to pulmonary hypertension. This is causing inflammation. The Bristol Medical Center in the UK showed that the spike protein severely disrupts the functions of cells that support the heart.
I've since learned that the adverse reactions to the vaccine are similar to the COVID long hauler symptoms. Could this circle back to the spike protein?
Lee et al. Out of Hong Kong demonstrated the antibodies made to the spike protein cross-react with our own tissues so that many people, when they make antibodies to the spike protein, they're getting an autoimmune response that can be devastating. We know the spike protein is toxic. Why are we having our bodies make it?
Me and my co-authors pointed out that when you look on national emergency services calls in Israel for cardiac arrest among young individuals under 40, you see a dramatic increase of 25% in these calls, parallel to the vaccination campaign in Israel in early 2021, not claiming that there is a causal effect. We don't have a proof for that. But we did raise the concern. We never got a response from the authorities. And in fact, they went public and called this research fake. I'm a believer in medicine. Me and my children are fully vaccinated with traditional vaccines, and I'm personally vaccinated with the Moderna vaccine. The fight of this virus requires collective humility, empathy, and having science on our side. I'm very concerned that we lost all of these in the last 18 months.
I'm a 51-year-old research nurse practitioner. I have 4 degrees. Medicine is my second career. I'm pro-patient, pro-science, and I've been fiercely pro-vaccine my entire life, often having fights with family members to get vaccinated. Prior to December 29th, 2020, I was a vibrant, compassionate, healthy person. Immediately after dose 1, I developed paresthesias in my right arm. The numbness and tingling traveled to my right side of my face, my eye, and my ear. I saw a neurologist, one of the top neurologists in New York City. He said, "Oh, if it subsides, get the second shot. We just don't know. It's all new." Dose 2 set me into a tailspin. Within 4 days, I developed debilitating tinnitus. The month of February, curled up in the fetal position on the bathroom floor, wondering, how will I ever live with this? It was so severe, couldn't hear TV, couldn't listen to music or read a book or hear what other people were saying. I offered up quickly. I think I'm having a reaction to the vaccine. I was quickly dismissed by a physician who had no knowledge about these vaccine reactions, and I was sent home with ibuprofen. By August, I literally exploded in generalized body neuropathies, stinging in my hands and feet, burning in the soles of my feet, prickling all over like I fell in a bush of nettles. Feeling so alone and so scared, I turned to social media because I couldn't find anybody. I set up a tinnitus group, 3,500 members joining in months. I started to help them as a nurse. It was the best way I could help, helping the people who had no insurance understand what their labs were, people who had no money, guiding them what tests they should get, how best to use their money. Social media. You're there, you're looking for support, you find support. They suddenly tag you, you're an anti-vaxxer. I couldn't get anybody to take an interest in me. I'm a researcher, I found that curious. Here I am presenting, unusual case. Study me. Reactions are real, they're a part of science. I got unlucky. But the real tragedy is not only the lack of adequate medical support, but the active and coordinated denial of our situations. The impact on my medical career, which I love and work so hard for, is immeasurable. I will continue to fight. I will continue to research. I will find an answer for people. Or I will die trying. Thank you for your time.
FDA, NIH, you are not taking care of those who suffer severe adverse reactions. Stop telling the public that you are. Take responsibility for your role in the suffering of good Americans who did their part by taking the vaccine and had no idea this could happen to them.
America wants to see FDA listen not only to vaccine-injured patients, but also to scientists who started to figure out this months and months ago. Establish ICD-10 and CPT codes. Release the NIH study on injuries.
So we reached out to the NIH essentially to report this injury. They took it very seriously. We had a telehealth within a couple of days. It turned into a cascade of patients, tens of thousands possibly. So they picked who they wanted to bring out. Then we did follow up for several weeks. We were supposed to go back out in September, and our follow-up appointments got canceled.
So maybe they said, fine, these guys and gals have recovered, we're done, and no more need to follow up.
Yeah, it was just radio silence. And I got an email from NAF in December. He said, we're not studying this. Stop sending people this way. So they knew that we were not 100% recovered.
The study came out, it became such a big buzz. This is their first study, and they are talking about the vaccine injury for the first time ever. Somebody from the government organization is actually presenting a study, and they're saying everybody recovered. And
this is
right?
what
so
cured looks like. So
is it possible, again, we don't have the rest of the patients. Do you think that they are feeling better? Is it that you are an exception and you're not feeling better, but others have?
I know at least half of the participants in this study, and none of them are better.
If they would have recognized these situations earlier, insurance systems would have been able to start covering them. Even if we just know this is a side effect that is recognized.
We also had the wrong bodies leading the vaccine program. Remember, the FDA is supposed to be the safety watchdog. The National Institutes of Health is the government research body, and the CDC is the outbreak investigation body. Right now, the CDC and the FDA are the named sponsors of a vaccine program. If American can learn anything, we should never have the FDA and CDC be a sponsor of a public program in administering a product.
Specifically, the NIAID division of the NIH co-owns the patent on the Moderna vaccine. 4 members get royalties from the profits into their personal pockets, not to mention that the entire budget of that program. It's publicly available information.
We should insist on independent data analysis by investigators who are not employed by the vaccine manufacturers.
In 1992, Congress passed the Prescription Drug User Fee Act. With the act, the FDA moved from a fully taxpayer-funded entity to one funded through tax dollars and new prescription drug user fees. Manufacturers pay these fees when submitting applications to the FDA for drug review, and annual user fees based on the number of approved drugs they have on the market.
Can you see any potential problems in the FDA being funded by the big pharma companies that it's regulating? In 2016, a study found that 15 of the 26 employees who left the agency later worked or consulted for the biopharmaceutical industry. Many of the physicians, caregivers, and other witnesses before FDA advisory panels that evaluate drugs receive consulting fees, expense payments, or other remunerations from pharma companies.
This is a chronicle of several examples of the CDC putting forth scientific studies that were just really fundamentally flawed. An example is the risk of diabetes in kids who have recovered from a SARS-CoV-2 infection. But it made a huge error, which was it didn't even adjust for BMI. That kids who may be overweight, have medical problems, might be slightly more likely to get SARS-CoV-2. They may also be more likely to develop diabetes because they're slightly overweight. You should at least compare them to people who didn't get COVID, who are of the same sorts of characteristics to isolate the effect of COVID. Now, this occurred at a time when the CDC had a policy goal to get 5 to 11-year-olds vaccinated. Now we have an agency that has, on a number of occasions, pushed bad science. I mean, science that I just don't believe is convincing as somebody who spends a lot of time reading science and thinking about it. You cannot do science differently because you want people to do something.
Some patients may be afraid of taking opioids because they're perceived as too strong or addictive, but that is far from actual fact. Less than 1% of patients taking opioids actually become addicted.
Doctors across the country should have been humbled when medical schools taught them the lessons learned from drugs like thalidomide and DES. DES was a synthetic estrogen given to women without problem. They had children, but the daughters of mothers who took DES got to be about 18 to 20 years old, and they developed rare genital cancers and infertility at an alarming rate. It took 40 years for the medical establishment to figure out that DES caused transgenerational infertility and cancers. And this was a drug that went through standard clinical trials.
On August 6, 2003, my husband of almost 10 years was found hanging from the rafters of our garage, dead at age 37. He had just started his dream job and was having difficulty sleeping, which is not uncommon for entrepreneurs. So he went to his doctor and was given the antidepressant Zoloft, off-label for insomnia. 5 weeks later, Woody took his own life. How many lives were destroyed and families torn apart before the FDA finally warned about the link between suicide and SSRIs? It is mind-boggling to me when you put a product out in the world, especially one that's been rushed through testing, that the FDA and other regulatory agencies wouldn't establish a robust, proactive safety monitoring program as part of the rollout.
In August 2021, the top two officials of the FDA, Philip Krause and Marian Gruber, resigned because of the pressure from the White House to approve boosters. This was big news. Why weren't more people talking about this? On February 7th, 2022, the Department of Homeland Security changed their definition of terrorism to the proliferation of false or misleading narratives which sow discord or undermine public trust in U.S. government institutions. For example, there is widespread online proliferation of false or misleading narratives regarding COVID-19. Why weren't more people questioning this? A prominent scientist who experienced severe tinnitus after his vaccination was in direct communication with the CDC in regards to them recognizing this reaction, but they stopped responding. Then, someone sent him a leaked CDC email saying, "Thank him for his email and cut him off."
No matter what they try, I will always fight